Have you ever been asked to engage in a school improvement initiative for which you felt you lacked the necessary experience, expertise, time to implement, the training you needed, and or the necessary support from colleagues? As a school leader for many years, I've witnessed this on many occasions. I've also had direct experience with this. To begin today's video on Reasonable Lift, I'm going to share my story about an initiative such as this. I was working as a district administrator for several years when the COVID shutdown smacked us in the face. I'm using these words quite deliberately because it literally did just that. The on-ramp to the COVID school shutdown was quite short and steep. 1 minute we were going about the district business as usual, and the next minute we were closed for the essential business of learning. But just as you all know, and just as it should be, we couldn't shut down for learning very long. It was imperative to our students and their families that we get meaningful learning going again and fast. But we had to do so in a way that was completely different from what we had done before and from what we knew well. The lift to get learning going again was quite heavy. We had to learn from scratch how to instruct students in a virtual environment. We had to put together entirely different systems for teaching students effectively. We had to get a whole bucket of resources we didn't have. We had to get Chromebooks in the hands of a district full of students who didn't have them. We had to ensure that all students had access to our live virtual instruction. We had to get materials to students' homes, and the list goes on and on. The lift was absolutely unreasonable. We lacked experience with online learning, we lacked resources, we lacked access to colleagues who were experts in this area. Almost every element of this forced initiative required lift that we were not prepared for. I share this story because I think it's one that many teachers and administrators can relate to. In my many years as an administrator, I have never felt so inadequate, so unprepared, so emotionally and physically exhausted, and so alone. The unreasonable lift associated with this initiative was closely linked to the negative feelings I felt as I trudged my way through the business of teaching and learning during this stress-inducing time. My point in telling this story is to illustrate the concept of unreasonable lift, to make this concept comprehensible so that you can begin to see where unreasonable lift might live in your school and or district, and specifically with your school initiatives. It's important that we begin to see this more clearly because unreasonable lift is associated with barriers to school improvement efforts. If our goal is to put school and district initiatives in place so that teachers are developing increased capacity for learning, and as a result, students are learning more, we have to work to decrease barriers to our school improvement efforts. And we have to work to ensure that the lift we're asking of our educators to implement school improvement efforts is reasonable. Now, although true, my COVID example is a bit extreme. Hopefully we never again find ourselves in a similar situation. That being said, it is almost always the case that a school initiative will require educators to learn and do something new or different, or to do more of something and less of something else, or to de-implement something, to stop doing all or some of something they once did. Reasonable lift is associated with a school's ability to increase its capacity to induce learning. Often, this needed increase in capacity is associated with school improvement efforts. We can make school improvement efforts more successful and doable when we work to equip our educators with the tools they need so that the lift for the initiative is reasonable. Leaders must be sure that what they ask of educators is clear, sustainable, and part of a plan or strategy. Where might lift live in your current context? Just to illustrate where this might live, let me share a couple of common examples. In our first example, let's focus on curriculum development. You likely have experience with school initiatives related to curriculum adoption and implementation. When you adopt a new curriculum, your teachers likely have some handle on the content because content doesn't tend to change too much from one curriculum to the next. However, with any new curriculum adoption and implementation, teachers have to learn how the curriculum aligns to the standards and from one grade level to the next. They have to learn how the curriculum rolls out and how to allocate time. They have to learn what the resources are, which ones are of high quality, which ones need some revision, and how the curriculum is best delivered, etc. The learning we ask of teachers when we engage them in curricular work, such as curriculum adoption and implementation, is steep. Because the curriculum is new, teachers are lacking in experience with the recently adopted curriculum. They have differing levels of expertise when it comes to instruction in general, and because the learning is new to everyone, they have less collegial support with their grade level and/or content-based teams. Additionally, work with a new curriculum takes significantly more time and cognitive energy, and they often lack those things as well. How we as leaders engage teachers in learning and implementation for this new initiative will determine whether the lift associated with this initiative is reasonable or unreasonable. Unreasonable lift associated with this curricular initiative will hinder the implementation and likely lead to feelings of inadequacy, stress, and unhappiness with the overall initiative. Let me give you another example. In our system, we work to maintain implementation of an instructional framework, one that defines the elements that aid in student learning. Within the context of this framework, we focus on elements such as strong objectives, teaching of essential academic background knowledge, teacher input that is clear and accessible to students, effective classroom management, active cognitive engagement of all students, gradual release of responsibility, etc. This focus has more to do with instructional practice or pedagogy than the curricular example I gave earlier. When it comes to individual teacher capacity in this area, teachers vary widely. The reasonability of the lift when it comes to instruction depends on the individual capacity of each teacher. It also depends on the teacher's unique circumstances. For example, you might have a teacher who has high instructional capacity, which increases the reasonability of their instructional lift, but their group of students in this particular school year might struggle more than usual. The teacher might have a higher proportion of students who are below standard academically and require additional support from the teacher in order to access the content. Or the teacher might have more students in this year's class who struggle to manage their behavior or struggle to attend to the task at hand. All of these things, academic need, behavioral need, ability to attend to task, impact the amount of lift associated with the teacher's ability to instruct students. Higher numbers of at-risk students increase unreasonable lift, even for teachers with strong instructional expertise. On the other hand, you might have a novice teacher. Maybe this is the beginning of the teacher's second year teaching. They've gotten somewhat of a handle on classroom management, but they're still honing and refining their skill set when it comes to delivering complex content and engaging all students effectively in instruction. In this case, the instructional lift is more unreasonable because the novice teacher is still learning and growing as an educator. In short, lift is reasonable or not based on the content and pedagogical expertise and expertise of the individual teacher or of school-based teams like professional learning communities, the behavior management ability of individual teachers or member of school-based teams, overall workload, which is impacted by things like the level and amount of committee work and/or other duties, time allocated or provided to complete required tasks, the teacher's instructional load, the time needed for individual students and/or the required duties within the teacher's schedule, the level of support from the teacher's team, colleagues and/or administrators, the number and/or demand of existing initiatives, and more. Our goal as a We Do instruction team is to help school leaders increase their capacity to support their staff on school improvement initiatives related to curriculum, instruction, cohesive and lasting student learning, and other systems and supports that are designed for sustainable school improvement. In our professional learning model, we work directly with school leaders on specific leadership moves associated with our Cohesive Schools framework, which is a comprehensive tool for analyzing student learning and growth, along with systems and structures within the school. Through the lens of the Cohesive Schools framework, leaders engage alongside We Do instructional team coaches to analyze their system's needs, identify areas for growth, design a growth plan, and implement the plan within the context of their own school buildings. This professional learning is comprehensive, job-embedded, aligned with the specific and unique needs of the school, timely, structured to take place over time, and meaningful. Additionally, our professional learning takes place in a collaborative and supportive setting and alongside coaches who support leaders along the way. As an example specifically related to the concept of reasonable lift, school leaders who engage in professional learning with our team will deepen their understanding and skill set to understand in more depth the cause and effect relationships associated with lift, to more easily identify whether a particular lift is reasonable or not, and to pre-plan for or anticipate where unreasonable lift will occur within the context of their own school and their own learning initiatives, and to develop a school plan associated with school improvement, and to implement that plan with support and confidence. If you are interested in learning more about unreasonable and reasonable lift, and more specifically about effective school improvement efforts, please subscribe to our YouTube page. Our model for professional learning is applicable for schools and school systems everywhere. If you as a leader want to make an instructional difference in your school, we encourage you to take a look.